Netflix, why we don't invest in Netflix, innovation when growth hits a roadblock. How do you deal with this as a company? How do you deal with this as an investor? I want to discuss Netflix's earnings, which came out yesterday, and I want to explain why we never invested in Netflix. And I think it's a nice arch that we can sort of draw between what's going on with Netflix and why we didn't invest. Sometimes explaining why you don't do something gives a good sense for what you're actually trying to do. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's July 21st, 2021. This is Krim Delco. For the day, we're 1%. The market is up 80 basis points. For the year, we are up 30 basis points. The market is up 16%. We are underperforming by 15.7%. So Netflix had earnings yesterday. Netflix is kind of, in a nutshell, you can probably explain it most easily that growth is stalling because there is, in my view, not enough innovation, not enough novelty anymore in the company. Why am I saying that? Well, there's two reasons. Why? One is I'm a customer, and I can just see the shows, the things that they're showing. The reasons to go on Netflix are, in my view, declining. And there's another problem here, and that is simply competition. So not just that you have less reason to go to Netflix, you have more reason to go elsewhere. Competition, in my personal area, is more on the YouTube side. I end up watching a lot more YouTube now. I watch things like, in particular, UFC. I think they're doing a very good job in showing, let's say, how people train, things like that. I'm actually less interested in the fights than I'm interested in the stories around them. And the UFC is doing a phenomenal job in giving you that kind of insight. So this would be just my personal situation. I'm sure a lot of other people have different types of reasons not to go to Netflix. Let's say my son, another example, he is 14-year-old. He is going to Netflix quite some time, but I would say that his only reason to go to Netflix is, let's say, when we're on vacation and he decides to be lazy and he starts to binge shows, things like that. Typically, when he goes to school and trains and when he's busy, he doesn't actually spend that much time on Netflix. And why is that? Because I feel like there is less immediate gratification. There's less interesting stories, less interesting situations that grasp you within a 10, 20 minutes time frame. I think what's good about Netflix is, for example, they have shows, of course, they have movies and things like that, but they're not able to, in my, at least as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of try and error there, and it's a little bit dangerous in a sense that when you try a few times to see a show and it doesn't work, you end up maybe switching over to YouTube and things like that. So this would be my personal opinion. Having said all of that, fundamentally what's happening with Netflix is that growth is stalling in the US and Western Europe. It's still growing because it's a global company. And I want to circle back to the book No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings, where he, in the book, actually talks about the management of Netflix and how they're sort of forced themselves to become a global emerging market type company because they knew that their growth has to be in those areas. And if you go back a further step and you think about what is actually the business of Netflix, it is to provide entertainment globally because they have this novel way of delivering entertainment, which is called streaming. So they can kind of cut through all the other barriers that existed. Satellite TV, cable TV was very local for physical hardware reasons, regulatory reasons. The internet opens up all of that and enables Netflix to deliver Brazilian shows to Brazil, Brazilian shows to Indonesia, Indonesian shows to the US, American shows globally, all that stuff, Argentinian shows to the US. And you know what, there is an infinite amount of permutations here. And some of that worked, some of that didn't. But according to Netflix themselves, according to Ted Sarandos and Reed Hastings, the demand for non-Hollywood type shows that are still sort of made in a Hollywood spirit and that would be your typical local show shot in, let's say I just recently saw a show which was decent, shot in Stockholm. It was a Hollywood style show. It had all the ingredients of a typical Hollywood type show with drug lords and hot sex and all that stuff. Well, very well acted, but it was local. It wasn't Swedish. It was interesting. So that kind of show I could see being more popular, let's say, not just in Sweden, but maybe at least in certain Western European countries and in certain parts of the US. So there is this ability to export local content by giving it a bit of a Hollywood touch, but still keeping it local. So all of that was sort of the business model of Netflix. Why is it stalling now? It's hard to say for me. I would say, having worked in media myself, I would say there's two reasons. One is it's just very difficult to continuously be interesting. It is very, very hard to continuously deliver good stories. That's one reason. The other reason is competition picks up and just makes it a little bit easier for people to switch. And you want to watch this, you want to watch that, and all that. And I think it's also a bit difficult for people. The more content there is, the more overwhelming it becomes. So I think a lot of people actually choose the other way around, where they would say things like, well, you know what, I'm just going to stick with, let's say, my offerings that I have, and not even go and try to find other offerings and all that. Now, having said all of that, I think the third point, actually, that I think Netflix is not doing so well is one of the things that I've always been criticizing, and now I want to jump over to the most important part of this particular episode, which is I want to explain why we never invested in Netflix. And I think it should give, hopefully, it should give people a good sense for what we're actually about to try to achieve with Orange Capital Partners. So the reason we never invested in Netflix is because the mission of the purpose of Orange Capital Partners is to invest in fundamentally new concepts, engineering practices with large impact. So the fundamentally new concept and engineering practice with Netflix, certainly there have been lots of new fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices, but in a sense they really haven't solved very, very hard problems. One, making shows and delivering them on the internet is a problem that is certainly not easy, but it's not that kind of hard problem that, for example, self-driving cars is, or building rockets that can go to Mars, or building a quantum computer. So really very difficult, very, very difficult, hard problems. It's not that kind of problem. It's more of a tweaking, iterating type of problem, where you also have the free source of the internet, which has been built around the global community, and therefore is also accessible to the global community. So there's a bit less differentiation and a little bit less also sort of this monopolistic situation that Peter Thiel talks in 0 to 1. Now, Netflix, in my view, had a shot to become absolute monopoly in terms of content delivery, and they said that themselves that the path towards that would be to have a phenomenal prediction engine. And the best prediction engine would be the one where you don't even have a choice, where they just simply deliver you the best content that is that would be geared towards your taste, your interests, and all that stuff. And I personally think that Netflix has failed on that front for two reasons. One is that they've limited themselves to their own content. They should have opened up to all the content. I always said that, even 10 years ago when they were talking, when I was going to conferences about data science and AI in the early days. This was maybe not 10 years ago, but right after ImageNet, so in the 2013, 14, 15 timeframe, Netflix was very vocal about, okay, we're going to have the best AI, we're going to have the best the recommendation engine, and it makes sense, because the better I recommend you content, the more you stay on my platform, the more you're sticky, the more you don't go somewhere else, the more I can raise the price, all that stuff. I think they failed on that again, because I think the Netflix recommendation engine is at best so-so. And partly it's because their own content, just no matter how good your recommendation engine is, if your content isn't that great, well, there's not much to recommend. And I think second, there's also the problem of, I think it's just not very good. And now, why is that? I think that the problem with actually recommending content has not been solved. I think people are sort of going along the easy, low-hanging fruit type of situations, where I watch a Clint Eastwood movie now. They recommend me 5 other Clint Eastwood movies. I watch a movie about some French actor in France, and I get now recommended movies with other French actors. I feel like very often the reason I like a movie, let's say I like, recently, what is a movie I liked? I liked Mr. Riddy. It's a Ben Stiller movie. I saw it on the plane. Beautiful movie. Okay, so why did I like that movie? Now, are you going to recommend me all other Ben Stiller movies? You can do that, fine. That's fine. But the chance that I like the others is not very high. Are you going to recommend me movies that have maybe there's Sean Penn in there, like in this particular movie, Sean Penn is there. Yeah, I mean it's a good starting point, but it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's just not enough because I'm in a certain mood, in a certain particular um, state of mind, frame of mind, all that stuff. And I think AI, I think in this day and age could be further, go further. Capture the state of mind, to capture my there's Major Tom is in the movie, the Bowie song. It's a key part of the movie. There's a line in the movie. They say this song is about courage. It's about going to the unknown. These are things that I am excited about, and if you can capture that, you can recommend maybe some movie that has no Ben Stiller, no Sean Penn, no nothing, but it has that same spirit. So I'm just saying, if there was a real, let's say, extraterrestrial intelligence coming down to Earth and watching me choose movies, I think they do a much better job than Netflix. So I think Netflix has failed, and that's why they're not growing. And I think Netflix is a company that has not delivered on fundamental new concepts and engineering practices, and focused a lot more on old style movie making and all that stuff. It's become a media company, and this is why we didn't invest. And this is also why I chose this example, to give people a sense for, look, this is what we're after. We are really after people that solve really hard problems. We hope to maybe come in at a point where the technology risk is not as high anymore, but it has to be very, very hard. And I don't want to be invested in a company that talks about movies and Golden Globes and all that stuff. So this is the reason why we didn't invest in Netflix. And now to finish this episode, I just want to jump over to our actual investment, our largest position, Tesla. And I want to talk a little bit about the risk that we're running with Tesla right now, which is their FSD. And the question is FSD, full self-driving, the software that Tesla is pushing out now at scale and offering subscription and all that, is that software similar to the recommendation engine of Netflix, meaning it is a very promising idea but not well executed, or is it actually going to change the game for Tesla? And I think right now the jury is still open. I would say that the problem is definitely a lot harder, and also in a sense much more useful. If I have a car that can drive me from here to San Diego, I'm going on a road trip today, and if I could drive without having to drive, even if I have to pay attention, but I really don't have to drive anymore, that is great. I don't have full self-driving. I'm a Tesla driver, but I don't have it, so I can't tell if it really works that well. The reason I don't have it is I don't want to pay $200 a month for a software I'm not really sure delivers me the value. And this is the caveat here. This is the problem. I'm not so sure, is this really going to deliver me what I'm looking for? And this is now kind of a discussion that is very difficult to have, because who am I to judge? I can judge for myself, but I can't judge for everybody else. So it's very difficult for me to make that judgment right now. Is this going to succeed or not? But I think it's a risk that we have to acknowledge. It's something that as Tesla investors we have to be aware of, that we could be wrong about the full self-drive situation. We could be wrong in the sense that we could actually expect this to work much better than it does. We could expect this to be a much better moneymaker than it is. This is a risk we have to live with, and it could be a substantial downturn on the stock, or the vice versa. If it actually turns out to be a lot more useful and people actually start subscribing, then it could be a great addition to the earnings potential, and therefore drive the stock up. So to summarize, I think when it comes to investing on our side, Orange Capital Partners, we are fundamentally interested in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices, which in plain English just means very hard technology problems with large impact, Self-driving is one of them. Quantum computing is one of them. The CRISPR technology, the digitization of life sciences is one of them. Those are the kinds of things we want to invest in. Netflix is not in that realm. Netflix has not solved such a hard problem. Therefore, we haven't invested in Netflix. And I think it's showing now in the numbers of Netflix that the growth is stalling because others can actually follow much easier than expected. Now, Netflix has an answer to that. They want to go into gaming, which is great. And I think it's a great idea and a great potential for the company to continue their growth. But again, this is not what we're after. We're not after a media company that just jumps on the next bandwagon. We're after companies that solve very hard problems. Netflix could have solved the hard problem of recommendation. They didn't. They went with the low-hanging fruit. Their recommendation engine is mediocre. And I think that's one of the problems with Netflix, and therefore we haven't invested in the company. And we do invest in companies like Tesla and CRISPR technology or CRISPR companies because they are really after solving the really hard problems. Thank you.